Hello.
I'm going to come and get these when you're done, because I'm after you.
Okay. Love all of you. You give me.
Wait, I'm supposed to wear it too?
Family does in some ways. Like,
This is the one that comes up.
Does that need to go in the other pocket?
You put it wherever you
I've
want.
had an amazing day, and MCs are always supposed
Can
to
you
say
not
that.
steal
I
this?
really mean it this time. I've had 100% hit rate on my sessions today, which is just unheard of. So I do want to just call out the great stuff I saw really fast.
Yeah.
In case you see these names in the future, if you go see them, Sheila and Rick Barlow, just glue the door.
It's all exported images, so it has to be perfect.
Participation in math classes. I don't know like first timers, but not like seasoned folks.
time
They
it was-
just killed it today. Rachel Lassick on technology, Google Forms.
She doesn't have the presenter view going, so I hope you didn't want it.
Session and differentiate the high and the low. It's hard to do. Great stuff. Faye on Desmos stuff, and Fidel on modeling. My stuff was great. I did it.
Did Suzanne tell you that you have to stay
In the box.
So I
tell
go to
everyone
more
that?
than my
I don't
fair
know.
share of state conferences, and I got to tell you,
You know you have to stand in the
do it
box.
the best
She
here.
should tell everyone.
Counting the other California in that too. I just want to tell you a few things that only happen here. That only happen here. South is great. The stuff that happens here are these following anecdotes, okay? Number one, scene is the morning. The sun is just peeking through. This deer crosses my path, and it sometimes happens. The deer stops and looks at me. I look at the deer. We have this kind of moment, almost spiritual in its own way. And the deer says to me, "Have a good day, Dan." It's going to be amazing. Other stuff that happened, I did this schedule. I went from Asilomar to middle school to Asilomar to middle school to Asilomar. Anybody do that insanity today? Yeah, we deserve some kind of badge or something. I saw 3 strangers at the middle school going to Asilomar. Said, "Hey, do you want to ride?" And they said yes. Only in Northern California, folks. At lunchtime, someone pulled out a guitar and was just strumming away.
My parents
out
met
here. You know, I
in Northern
tossed
California
$1 in there.
because my mom was hitchhiking. She wanted to go to the beach.
On my way to my
dad picked her up.
session, I tripped over some kelp. You know, And at the end of my session here, someone comes up, as usual, like, "Hi, hello, how are you?" And this person comes up to tell me that his son loved my late father's class, his 6th grade class in chess club as a kid. This right here is the conference that cares. I tell you, only at me. So, I'm going to gather in a second. My role here is really just to
When
stall
should I
for
put that
time
on?
as they switch the microphones over back and forth.
You said I'm talking.
So the format, if you don't know, for Ignite. Anybody seen Ignite before? Great. For the newcomers, it works like this. It's 20 slides. 20 slides, static slides if you do it right, no fancy stuff on there. Just static. Purist. 20 slides, 15 seconds per slide. Do the math on that real fast. Adds up to 5 minutes of misery for the person. There's like this just huge cloud, invisible cloud of angst over the and I'm thrilled not to be a part of it. I've done my therapies. I can't say no to the math forum, our fine friends from the East Coast. And every sense of the word, every time I do one though, I feel like I've lost a year of my life. They're that tough. Yeah, it's like NASCAR in its own way. I mean, if it's done right and correctly, it's a fine time. But if it goes sideways also, no one's going to complain. You know, if the slides out when you're taught, someone starts to stammer, it's like, come on, come on, come on, it's going to happen. So enjoy that. What I'll be doing is I asked everybody for 2 truths and a lie about themselves. I don't know which is which is the lie and the truth. Some folks, I hear murmurs. Some folks have decided to do X truths and 3 minus X lies. X is a number between 0 and 3. It's a math joke. Have someone explain to you. I may also, depending on how intimate we get here, you and me, the vibe in the room, I would be very curious what your resolutions are walking away. Again, that opening session I love. Had us all write down something that we would do going away from here. So I may think about it, what you want to do leaving here. So that said, I'm going to turn this over to, we have our first presenter. Is Michael Fenton. Two truths and a lie. My son, Tyler, he says, was born on Pi Day at tau in the morning. He once accidentally ordered 4 kilograms of salami from a deli in Santiago, Chile. Michael, not the son, Tyler. Sorry. And he has earned all 3 of the black hole badges on the Khan Academy. So, please give it up for Michael Fenton.
Here's my goal for the next 5 minutes. I want to convince you guys that some of what passes for innovative use of technology in the classroom is actually dehumanizing and therefore destined to be ineffective. And I thought, what better way to start than with a blue police box? For those who aren't addicted to Doctor Who, that's the TARDIS. It's an amazing box of infinite potential. It can take you anywhere in space and any time in history. It's bigger on the inside. There's all these amazing facts. Well, it's a ridiculously cool box. Here's some other very cool boxes. And a few years ago, one of the box makers of these things that bigger on the inside, check, can take you anywhere, yeah, time travel not so much, well, they decided to spend billions developing a new box and then began touting how it was going to change the world and, in particular, education. And how are they going to do that? They're going to revolutionize the textbook. Okay, I watched the infomercial, and I have to confess, I was stoked after that 7-minute infomercial. The future looked amazing, and it was right around the corner. But then I watched it again, and a third time, and all of that excitement disintegrated into what looked like a few gimmicks. You're not excited about your textbook? You need digital flashcards. You need sorting activities that students don't actually sort anything. They just tap a button and it all goes like that and it's perfect. So Apple and I part ways as we walk down the woods. I thought we were going to change the world, and they're just selling this idea that teaching is little more than sequencing the right combination of letters and symbols, or in this case, ones and zeros. It treats kids like consumers, and therefore it's not just something that is neutral, it's actually training them to be that way. So here's what I would like to do. Let me back up, sorry. The slides, it's crazy, 15 seconds. I'm losing my mind. There's one part of the video that still resonates with me. It's this right here, the idea that if you can stimulate curiosity, then you've got the spark for learning. I said amen to that, but what is it that stimulates curiosity? Is it a grid like that, where you've got 900 skills just begging to be mastered? Uncle Sal is on the side to help whenever you need it. And if you weren't inspired the first time, pause, rewind, play it again. That should work. I've seen the future and it terrifies me, or at least one version of it, because it looks like this. You've got headphones and no heart. Everything that makes our students most human is put on pause and set to the side. That's not the revolution I was looking for. Isn't she adorable? There's another one that looks exactly like her. It's amazing. But what I want for my students and my kids and other people's students is I want them to come home from school and I want to say, what inspired you today? What made you curious today? What did you create today? So here's what I propose. I've got 4 ideas that I think we can use technology in ways that humanize us rather than dehumanize us. The first thing I'd like to do is replace indifference with curiosity. Let's break out our cell phones, and when you're in the kitchen, the checkout line at Vaughn's, your battery's about to die on your phone, or you're just randomly trolling the internet and you see this picture of Skittles that blows your mind, capture those things, draw them into class so that you can draw your students into the world of math, catch their curiosity. Number 2, let's replace consumption with creativity. I have never, ever had a student email me and say, I just spent a week binge watching Khan Academy videos and it was amazing. But I did have a student, and I want you to imagine the previous slide right now. I did have a student send me an email and he said, look, I made this boat. And he didn't make it for a badge. He made it because making things is amazing. Let's do more of that. Let's replace competition with collaboration. Competition's cool, but I am less interested in energy points and smartphone clicker quizzes than I am in students using tools like Google Drive to collaborate, revise, give feedback to each other. Let's replace isolation with what's going to come on the next slide, but I think I'll tell you now anyway. Let's replace, the timing is horrible. Let's replace isolation with conversation. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but teacher.desmos.com It'll blow your mind. And instead of getting kids isolated, headphones, these little cubicles, that's not progress. Let's get more discussion, more math arguing going on in the classroom, because that's what's valuable. If you want to talk about the flipped classroom, this is what I would like to flip. All of that, and let's flip it over to here. Technology is one tool among many, and it's only as powerful or as useless, or in some dangerous cases, as damaging as we make it. So let's use these tools well. Thank you.
Can you help there?
Hot fire!
Girl pants.
First time ignited there, Michael? First time?
Yeah. Oh, maybe there's something in there. No, you're hitting the button.
After all of that, we got some folks who really all you were thinking the whole time was, which one of those was true? Which one was a lie? Oh man, all right, so which one was the lie here? It's gotta be Pi Day and Tower Clock. That's two are true. Two are true. The lie is the Pi Day, right? I mean, obviously. No.
It's the lobby.
Why would I lie about my son?
It's the lobby.
So you're saying you're critiquing Khan Academy and you have not earned the 3 black hole badge?
No, I have all the sun badges.
So that was amazing. Thank you. Next up here is Annie Fenner. Her 2 truths and a lie are these. She is related to Cole Porter, number 1. She met her husband when she was 15 and married him when she was 35. And she always says exactly what she thinks. I hope that one's true. We'll all profit. Please welcome up Annie.
I can even push the button. All right. Oh, she didn't push the button, so I can talk as long as I want, right? All right. So a few weeks ago, I was giving a talk at a conference, and we were talking about sense-making and noticing and wondering and all the stuff, if you came to my talk this afternoon, that we talked about, and I've maybe talked about before. We had a great time, and this one teacher at the end, we had some questions. She said, you're not going to like this question. I like all these ideas, but I don't have time when I got to be done with chapter 4 by the end of November, or else. And of course, I'm a professional, so I was like, oh, okay, that's really nice. So, and I gave her some ideas, but let's revisit for a moment my 2 truths and a lie. I am related to Cole Porter. I can sing a few bars for you later. I did meet my husband when I was 15, but we totally do not have time to talk about that right now. And those of you who know me know that I often say exactly what I think, very often. But there are times when I don't, because what I really wanted to tell this woman was, you are wasting everyone's time, right? You're rushing through stuff, kids have no idea what's going on, and you're blowing it because they don't know what's going on. So let's look at a few cases. I was working with this 7th grade teacher, and she's like, my kids are really good at the Pythagorean theorem. We've been doing this for a week, and let me tell you, they are killing it. They can find A, B, or C every time. I'm like, that's great. She's like, let's do a problem about it. Why don't you do a problem with them? I said, great. So I brought this problem, and so the first period of 7th graders, they noticed and wondered about this picture, and the second period of 7th graders noticed and wondered, and right at the end of the second period, one kid finally notices that there's a right triangle in the picture, right? And I'm like, okay, you can imagine. So I'm thinking, oh, that's just awful. What do people have to say about this on Twitter? So I asked about it, and Lisa Henry wrote back, and she's been doing the algebra problems of the week with her students this year for the first time, and she said, I've got to do it because I want my kids to be able to find the math in situations. She didn't know about the 7th graders, but she wanted them to be able to find the right triangle so they could get to A, B, and C, right? She feels like if my kids have problem-solving skills, it's okay if we miss out on some of the content because they'll cover for it. They'll figure it out. I don't want to use the word cover, my goodness. And she's wanted to do this for years because, she's looked at the tests that are coming up, like it or not, and that's what kids are going to have to do. They're going to have to be able to think, and they're going to have to be able to figure things out, not crank out answers. So Bob Loschel tweeted back to me, and he said, some people see it, if I take some time to do habits of mind, I lose time for the other things. understanding that like there's only this balance, and they don't understand there's this efficiency from doing things around habits of mind that it kind of doesn't matter. Tina Cardone was a great example of this. She tweeted about this graph she was doing with her fundamentals of algebra kids, and they noticed and wondered about this because they wanted to talk about slope. And she said, you know, we noticed and wondered the heck out of this, and then when it came time to actually do the handout, the kids didn't ask any questions. They knew exactly what was going on. They had gained all of this time, and she said, we didn't even have to have a wrap-up discussion because they got it. They understand, and they were excited to do the handout because they understood the situation so well from doing noticing and wondering. Right? So another teacher, Paul, a middle school teacher friend of mine, taught a geometry class to 8th graders, and one year he couldn't meet with them on Fridays, every single Friday, right? He was going to miss out on 1/5 of his instructional time, so he said, I'll just send them to the lab. And they went to the lab, and they did, yes, it's an old version of Sketchpad, because this is the 90s, and Jerry in the lab just said, look, I'm just going to do stuff from this book, and she just gave the kids activities from the book. She didn't talk to Paul about what he was doing in class at all. They just did Sketchpad. And what happened was, you get back into geometry class and February rolls around and the kids start saying, Teacher Paul, we know this already. And he's like, no, you've seen it before. No, we know it. It's the first time he ever finished the book, and he only had them for 4 days out of 5. That's not how it's supposed to work, right? So here are some familiar laments that if you hang out in schools like I do, you often hear. And if we're just rushing through and trying to cover stuff, no matter how good we are at doing that, these things are not going to change, right? We're going to keep doing these same things. Do 7th graders, for example, realize that 7th grade math is really sort of about 9 ideas? Or do they think it's about 785 pages of separate ideas, right? A hint, the answer is the second one. Coaches and administrators, are you giving your teachers time and support to do the mathematical practice and to do all 5 of these things and not just procedural fluency? Because it's on you too, okay? Just saying. So we hurry through coverage, and that is not going to make kids like math or be good at math or do well at math. Right? So we really need to not do that. What we need to do is we need to slow down and wait for the next slide. We need to be doing these things so that our kids can figure out that they can learn math and that they really like it because it's awesome. All right, thank you.
You are wasting everybody's time. Get the sense so far, our 2 first presenters are unburdening themselves of a certain amount of angst. So far, it's a group therapy session over there, and I love it. We're all finishing. I hope you agree. The math forum folks have done so many of these, seen so many, that timing is perfect. It's amazing to watch. Michael had some trouble there for a second, but it's like that NASCAR, like starts to skid out of control. Come on. And then he writes it and pulls into the turn. It's like, all right, well, good job. Looking forward to that's Javier Garcia. Javier has X truths and 3 minus X lies. He says, I taught with and now support as a coach teachers whose classes I once sat in as a student. Sounds kind of awkward. Javier says, I spent several months backpacking through Europe shortly after graduating college. Sounds very implausible. Javier says that his first teaching job was given to him by one of the teachers he once had as a student. So please give a warm welcome to Javier.
All right, so my talk is called The Gate, the Voice, and the Mirror. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself as a student. When I started getting my acceptance letters from universities, my mom confessed to me that she thought maybe I was dreaming a little bit too big, that maybe I was out over my skis a little bit here, and that maybe the system that I was looking to kind of break into wasn't kind of ready for a kid like me. I was a first generation kid from the Central Valley, and she had experienced biases in her experience coming to the United States. Now, that was kind of a shock to me because growing up, that wasn't the message that necessarily they had given me. I had believed that basically I could do whatever I wanted. As long as I worked hard, those opportunities would be there for me. I had awesome teachers, an awesome support system. But the thing that I think troubles me probably more now than it did then is that those kinds of opportunities weren't always there for other students like me. And so I think the big question here is in our educational system, are we teaching or are we sorting? And I think the hard thing for us that we have to confront is that math is usually the biggest weapon in that sorting process. If you have the teacher on that last slide, you probably don't have a lot of students that look like this. Hopefully we do have students that see mathematics as something that's kind of amazing. It's like Charlie getting that golden, or Charlie Bucket getting the gold ticket there. The students need our support. They need us to kind of connect all of those ideas together, and hopefully the gate that is being crossed isn't necessarily the one that kind of allows them in. That's not the only one, but also the one that allows us into their hearts and minds. One thing that math has taught me is that math makes a lot of things that were once impossible possible. Here's a list of things that at some point in history people thought were kind of ridiculous or not we weren't able to do anything with. This is Lily Tomlin. I love this quote. Rochelle Gutierrez has this idea that math needs people and the diversity of ideas that come with people sharing all of the big ideas. If our math classes have a bias, pull some people out, are we allowing all of those voices to be heard? Which brings us to this. Here we have the choir, right? These are all the people here that really kind of get it. And there's all these folks that aren't here. Are we sharing our voices with them? We're all looking for solutions to the same problem. Are we sharing what solutions are? We're all kind of looking for the answers in our own classes. That we share what we have in our hearts, that we allow the students to connect their own hearts to their classrooms. And then looking at these two situations, which one looks more like the traditional classroom? Which one looks more like your classroom? Which one allows for students to discourse? Which one allows for the students to kind of have a direct link access to the mathematics? And I think with voice, there's this really important notion of listening. What is it that we're hearing from each other? Are we really listening to each other or just kind of talking? To me, the math community has been extremely accepting and open and kind of amazing just to find myself up here actually. My last little metaphor is the mirror. The mirror is one of the things that I hear a lot from get to go into each other's classrooms is that, hey, the students do exactly what we tell them. So if that's true, why do we always say things like, well, they're not going to be able to, or they can't, or they won't? I think it's recognizing students. Do we recognize our own reflections? Because our students really just kind of reflect back what we're doing. I'll tell you guys a little bit of a story of a student that I had named Nick. Nick was an awesome kid. He was surprised his previous teacher because he was like, I can't believe he's thriving so well in your class. I was like, yeah, he's a great kid doing a lot of really cool stuff. He was taking an exam in my class and was really stumped on one of those classic algebra problems where you have one plane going one way, another one going the other way. How long before they... He was really struggling, kind of puzzling over this problem, but he wasn't quitting, which I was happy about. And so as other kids kind of gave up and turned in their test, I kind of walked over to Nick and I was really pleased to see him draw this. But eventually he kind of busted out his eraser as soon as I walked up to him. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, can I not do this? And so I kind of recognized at that moment that even though I thought I had been communicating to him certain things about what I believed about teaching, maybe that wasn't always the case. So I felt like at that point I still had work to do. And so hopefully with that, you guys will all kind of recognize the metaphor and think about how that applies to you. And thank you all very much for your time with the test. Thank you.
My favorite Ignites just rock the imagery up there. Such a great forum. The images. Our first couple presenters turn the lens out there on the folks who are not like us, but I do appreciate that we should talk to each other in critical terms like that. Thanks so much, Javier, who did not tell us which were the truths and lies. Not that.
The last one was a lie. It was actually my sister's elementary school teacher
Who got you your job teaching? Is that right? Okay, I never would have guessed. But just awesome so far. Awesome so far, yes? Is it unfair of me to take that as a credit to my leadership as the MC here? It's not unfair. It's not unfair. It's totally unfair anyway. So next up, we have Bree, who I love. Bree is a friend from the blogosphere, longtime friend of the organization here. Bree's 2 truths and a lie, which I happen to know are more than one lie.
There are X lies, right?
X lies, where X is greater than 1 Bree.
Yes, that's true.
Bree has said that she claims that she has visited 31 of the U.S. national parks, that she is a 3-time National Novel Writing Month winner. And that she has read 64 books so far this year. Wow. Great work, Bree. Great work. Please hold it.
Before I begin, I just want to take the moment to thank the Math Forum for putting on this event, and in particular to Suzanne for inviting me to take a risk and participate, even though I said no the first time she asked me. To start off with, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. Some of you know me as a math teacher, as a blogger, as the co-creator of the Twitter hashtag Dan Meyer Facts. But one thing you should also know about me is that I am not a risk taker. I look twice before crossing the street. I drive the speed limit. I slow down for yellow lights most of the time. You know, as one should. But lots of things scare me. I don't particularly like heights. I kind of hate the ocean. And public speaking makes me anxious. In fact, you should probably know that I'm terrified right now. Some of you, though, may have noticed that in the previous slide, the fact that I'm afraid of things doesn't hold me back. I don't let my fear hold me back. Instead, I embrace it. And you know, in kind of an awkward way. But the truth is that not all risks are created equally. While I personally refuse to ride on a roller coaster or parachute out of an airplane, statistically speaking, driving my car down the interstate is much more likely to kill me. We have a fairly good sense of the relative risk of different behaviors. Walking is pretty safe. Riding your bike comes with some moderate risk. Base jumping, you have to be crazy to do that. Now, if there was some way that we could just quantify the riskiness of a behavior, that would be really helpful. We could then put it on our Facebook pages, we could include it in our Match.com profiles. You know, I only go up to level 4 risks. Well, I'm more of a level 7 kind of guy. Then eHarmony would never match those two together. When we say we want our students to take safe risks, we mean things like don't do drugs, practice safer sex, don't drive like an idiot. We mean taking physically safe risks. But this doesn't fully capture what it means to take a risk. This only gives us a measure of physical danger. What about the emotional risks that we take? How can we take those into account? Things like trying out for the volleyball team, performing in the spring play, asking out that cute guy from chemistry class. These are all risks that students take, often without an acknowledgement that they can be very scary. They can feel really unsafe, even though no physical harm will result. Okay, but when students walk through the doors of our math classrooms, they're in a safe space, right? There aren't a lot of opportunities for them to take risks. They're not asking each other out to prom or practicing their monologue when they're supposed to be learning how to factor and differentiate trig functions. Well, some of that's probably happening, but there are still plenty of other opportunities for students to take risks. Think about what students avoid doing. Does Sam hesitate to raise his hand? Does Genevieve refuse to put a problem up on the smartboard/whiteboard/document camera? We can infer that perhaps what's going on in those students' minds is that they are afraid of making a mistake. They're afraid of looking stupid or of feeling stupid. No one likes to feel stupid after all. But cognitive and neuroscience tell us that making mistakes actually helps us to learn. We understand things better if we've had to struggle to lay it down in our neural pathways. So we arrive at a conundrum. Students don't want to make mistakes, and we want them to make mistakes, or at the least we want them to learn from the mistakes that they've made. The takeaway from all of this is that we have to make our classrooms safe spaces for students to take risks, to make mistakes. We need to normalize mistake making. Things like math mistakes, test recycles, the mistake game, my favorite no, breaking the math. There are so many things that amazing teachers out there are doing to create safe spaces in their classrooms for students to take risks and to make mistakes. Now, I don't want you to forget to model your own mistake making. Will your students believe you when you say it's okay to make mistakes if every time you make one, you say you were just checking to make sure they were paying attention? I want you instead to celebrate the risks that students take both in and out of the classroom. I want you, not just their successes, I want you to share your own risks taken. It takes courage. After all, there's no such thing as a safe risk. Thank you.
Love that Bree highlights here at one point one of our satellite communities, unofficial, the math Twitter blogosphere. You don't know all the fun that's happening there, ask Bree or someone else how to get stuff with this Twitter thing. I love it. I gotta admit that anytime that Bree had an animal or a baby up there, I kind of lost track a little bit. Do you want to confirm for the record, Bree, that was 3 lies? 3 lies? 3 lies. Congratulations.
Only the numbers were untrue.
Oh. So, okay, got it.
Over, under, over.
Only the numbers were untrue. Still a lie. Still a lie. Lila York's a new friend of mine. She's from Southern California, which makes me feel bad for throwing some shade at Southern California earlier. Apologies, very inhospitable of me. Lila has 2 truths and a lie. One, she played basketball in college. She's Latino, and she didn't start driving until she was 22. So please welcome Lila.
So tonight I want to talk to you about the comedic beauty of mathematics, or more specifically, the things that we learn through laughter. I will admit that I'm a die-hard cat fanatic, so I took as many opportunities as possible to incorporate cats in here, so please bear with me. It all started when I was in the middle of my master's program, and I was student teaching at a high school. In the midst of all the crying, sweating, and anxiety attacks, I realized that I was developing relationships with my guiding teacher students, and we were having some pretty funny moments. But what began to hurt my feelings is that I was forgetting the details of these funny moments, and I wasn't able to actually share those experiences with other people. So I got a journal, and I started to log in all the ridiculous things that I was hearing because they were such beautiful moments. Moments like these. I ask, is this a linear equation? Miss, what about the 2xy? The x and y are being multiplied. That's how excited my students are to ask questions, in case you're wondering. I don't know, miss, maybe the 2 was just trying to be cute like that. Understand that with every comedic moment, there is a lesson to be learned. I learned that integers often try to get sexy so that they can bring all their variables to the yard. While this is quite inaccurate, it was funny to me at the moment, and it set the tone for us to be comfortable with such beautiful moments. Just so you know, thumptana is a slang term for your ass. Miss, can we call the parentheses thumptanas? Unbeknownst to what he was setting up, I agreed. Okay, distribute the -1. Now, miss, drop that thumptana. That's me as my head exploded. Now, while this joke was slightly inappropriate, I still did learn something. I learned maybe drop it like it's hot is a mathematical phrase. Maybe Snoop Dogg was referring to the distributive property. Maybe we can learn something from rap music. So you don't think that I just want you to tell jokes to your students. Research shows that humor can increase students' creativity, lower students' anxiety and the affective filter, and contribute to students' social and emotional development. There's a citation, so you have to believe me. In all honesty, I absolutely despise when my classroom is quiet. It makes me think that the students have checked out. When students are actually speaking, I know that they're willing to engage and collaborate. I mean, if it's quiet, you don't have the opportunity to experience such beautiful moments like this one. Let's say I square some number x. In order to undo that operation, I need to take the square root. I figure we're cooking with gas now, so I ask. So if I cube some number x, and then in order to undo that operation, I need to take the triangle root. Now, I haven't fully incorporated the mathematical into my classroom, but I realized that we still need to work on looking for and expressing regularity and repeated reasoning. And in actuality, these types of responses reveal some other things about my students' thinking. There are other advantages. The laughter creates a positive classroom climate. Not only is the relationship building amongst the students, but I'm developing really close bonds with my students as well, and they're willing to take risks with the content instead of being scared to ask questions. But of course, there are some disadvantages as well. Sometimes we have trouble getting back on track after a really good laugh. As the teacher, there is no hesitation to make me the butt of the joke, which can be good and bad, and sometimes there's a very thin line between what's appropriate and what's not. But even inappropriate jokes create such beautiful moments. How do we verify that two functions are inverse functions? Show that X and B are both equal to X. Okay, yeah, you have to do fog and golf. Hey miss, fog off. Now, as a teacher, I've learned to read in between the lines of the students. Now I've learned to read in between the lines of the angry, overwhelmed students, and even the excited ones. And this is probably my favorite lesson that I've learned. Sometimes fog off really means I love you and thank you for teaching me. Now, there's no magic to this. There is a structure, and now I've lost my tracking, so I can't read all these things down. But I feel like the most important thing is to make sure that you follow feedback so that you're actually learning in the classroom. Remember, that is the key focus here. And I like to make sure that I'm doing this in and out of the classroom. I created a Twitter and an Instagram for my students so that they can infiltrate their lives with mathematics even when we're not in class. I want them to understand my humor just as much as I understand theirs. In and out of the class, there's such beautiful moments. So how much taller am I than the student standing next to me? You're about twice as tall as the shorter person. Okay, so you're a square and she's a triangle. Excuse me? Yeah, since the area of a triangle is half the area of a square, that means that she's a triangle and you're a square. Now, while this wasn't funny, this isn't really a joke, it was really funny and I laughed at the time because it was quite clever. And sometimes the jokes are more than just jokes when we actually teach our kids something. They reveal their understanding, beliefs, fears, and aspirations through comedy. So let your love for mathematics shine through comedy. No, you don't have to actually tell jokes every day or implement humor into every handout, but encourage students to explore mathematics through humor. By the way, if you're not laughing about math, you're missing such beautiful moments. Me. Oh, no, that's not.
That was electric. You guys have got to cut it with the cat pictures though. It's been quite the internet-y night, I gotta say. Lila's just like tipped the scale entirely, but we got like the meme stuff going on, animated GIFs, like it's just all up there right now. It's that internet night here, love it. Super curious, can you teach funny? Can funny be taught, or are you just like born with that? Can you go through your funny workshop?
I'm just spectacular. So.
You're just spectacular. We're just gonna send all the kids over to you. Awesome. You want to let us know, just folks are dying here, which is the lie? All of them?
Contrary to what you might think, I never play basketball.
Never play basketball. Playing with your expectations for tall people, I love it. I love it. Just a bunch of jocks, tall people, right? You probably play basketball. How tall are you? See, so we're now halfway through. It's been an amazing first half. I hope you agree. Sitting over there, the first 5 who are now done, I would love for you guys to just share an adjective that describes how you feel now to your colleagues on the back half here. Does anybody have an adjective you would share right now that describes you?
Ecstatic.
Ecstatic is one. Relief.
Relief is the one I was
+1 on relief there. Okay, great. This is Max is coming up. I've seen Max do these things a bunch. I should downplay Max to set him up for success later, but I'm not going to. Max and Annie both just consistently kill it at these things. Max is, so it's gonna be great. Max is 2 truths and a lie. Max taught 9th grade geometry to all boy classes. Max recently armed over 60 Philly school students with marshmallow guns. Okay, good for you. Max is fostering his 4th puppy who will grow up to be a service dog. Well, it could be a lie, it could be a lie. It's not that crazy here. Welcome up, Max.
This past couple of months have made me need to talk to you guys about math teachers and how we can be the key to ending racism. More than the past couple of months, but it's just a national teachable moment right now. The first place I want to look at is in math class. There are so many stereotypes that come with our subject. People think it was invented by Europeans, and it's about manipulating numbers in magical ways, and if you can do it, you're smart, and if you can't, you're not. And the truth about math is that every single culture uses mathematical thinking. Everyone already does math. And what counts as good math has to do with who you're doing it with and why. It's not a marker of intelligence, it's something you get better at by doing it with people. And the reason that matters is because we have decided that some groups of people are good at math and some groups are bad at math. And then we use math as a gatekeeper for college and career. And so if we can break those math stereotypes, we can actually open up gates. One way that math teachers can change that equation is to make sure that you listen to students of color and position their ideas as leaders in your math classroom. And if your class doesn't have students of color, you can find classes that do and make pen pals and connect through the internet. You can also teach your students to be mathropologists, to find the way that math is happening already in their community, and to learn to make those connections to school math, but be critical about those connections. What are the ways that the math we're doing is and isn't represented at school? But this part is even way more fun, is that mathematics teachers actually hold one of the biggest keys to changing everyone's perceptions about stereotypes and racism, which is why we need to talk about racism in math classes, whether it's white teachers and white students and students of color. Cultural racism is the kind of racism I'm talking about. It's the kind that Dr. Tatum says is like a smog. We all live in a racist society with racist media and racist ideas. Every time we breathe, we're breathing that in. We don't mean to do it, but we do. There's a website, understandingprejudice.org. You can actually take a test, a psychological test of your unconscious bias. So I did it in preparation for this talk. That's my result. I have a moderate automatic preference for European Americans compared to African Americans, which is scary because when I work with people who are people of color and I have to make split-second decisions about how to treat them and how to interact with them, my brain is not helping. My brain is feeding back that smog that I've been breathing my whole life. And so I might affect someone in a way I don't mean to, but I'm a math teacher. I know what to do when my brain makes mistakes because I'm not thinking. These are 3 math mistakes that I have made in the past 72 hours. There are a lot more racism mistakes that I've made in the past 72 hours, but in both cases, I know what to do because I'm a math teacher. You slow down, you check your work, you understand the concepts, and you practice so you get better at it. We can practice mathematical concepts that actually help us check that smog, be like a smog filter. The 2 mathematical concepts I think will undo racism are proportional reasoning and statistical literacy. If we can get good at that and apply that to racism, we can go a long way towards not making that automatic first gesture. So when we hear someone on the radio say, well, more white people than black people are victims of deadly police shootings, and they want us to think, oh, that means there's no racism when somebody gets shot by the police who's a person of color. We can think, wait a minute, proportional reasoning. If you think about the number of black people in this country compared to the number of white people, and you know about proportional reasoning, you can ask questions like, what's the rate at which people of color are killed during police arrests? How many times more likely? So can your students think about data about race and come up with calculations like they did on the Vox website to be able to think about how many times more likely can they make that come to life for them through proportional reasoning. If you are going to bring data about race into your classroom, I think there's a really important sociological point you also have to make though, which is if we say that we're measuring race, what we're actually measuring is the effects of racism. As a biological construct, race isn't really real. So what you're measuring when you look at how people of color and white people compare is how racism has affected people. So if you hear that racial groups score lower on the SATs, what you're learning about is that racism, through things like stereotype threat, has affected folks. So train students to ask, does this anecdote represent actual data? Is this outcome disproportionate? Could this outcome be due to racism? And you're building them a mathematical smog filter that can help them stop their automatic judgments and stereotypes. The death of Mike Brown is not redeemable, but through bringing it into the classroom, we might be able to restore a little bit of our humanity together. Thank you.
propped him up way high, right? He still comes over the top of that. Max does. Extremely insightful, powerful talk. It's just amazing. Thanks, Max. We have right now Terry Ryan's coming up. Terry Ryan's a new friend of mine. She's I know this is true. This part is true. She's a nurse for 20 years, and I think it's amazing when folks do two very difficult jobs well. That's just really cool. And we are better off to have her here. So her two truths and a lie, though, are that she went to the same school as Kurt Russell. She was a cheerleader with Anna Shoshka. She covered the first floor of her home with wood flooring from Gloria Yeager's dance studio, all of which I asked, who's Kurt Russell anyway? Please, welcome up Terry Ryan, please.
I work in the Napa Valley, and this is what most people think of when you say Napa Valley. I taught high school there for 10 years, and just this year I changed my job. And I now work with these kids, the elementary kids. I work with their teachers, I work in their classrooms, and I love these kids. I didn't think I would at first. I was a little nervous about working with these kids, but they are amazing. A few things I've noticed about the differences, and every one of these is true, by the way. No lies here. The last one bothers me because in elementary classes, those kids have no problem coming up with questions. What do you notice? They notice everything, and you sometimes have to reel them back in because they're so excited about it. High school kids, not so much. Just get on with it and tell us what we need to know so we don't have to think about this or spend any time worrying about this. Elementary kids are also full of questions. You give them something to play with and immediately they're wondering what they can do with it, how they can change it, how they can make it better, what'll happen if and they're off and running. High school kids, not so much. In fact, if you can even get them to breathe every once in a while so you know they're still with you, it's amazing. I notice there's a lot of excitement at the elementary level, but I also notice there's a lot of inequities that start showing up at that elementary level too, and that worries me. Because I think that's what we see happening in our high schools. I think a lot of the quietness is due to those inequities that start at the elementary level. And I don't know what to do about that. I'm doing a lot of wondering about that. I want to know how we change our normal looking high school classrooms to what goes on in elementary classrooms when kids are learning there. I want to see our high school kids do what our elementary kids do. I believe that high school kids want to learn. I believe that learning also is not just coming out of a book or doing what the teacher tells us. And I think that a lot of our teaching practices stifle that. I know that's a fact because the math Twitter blogosphere has taught me that. They have taught me that we can do amazing lessons. They have taught me that we can do different things in the classroom and that we can get different results from kids. We do have a lot of work to do though. This child poverty slide really hit me. In our realm of the world, child poverty comes from absentee parents. And that one I think hurts the most. These common goals for all students, we need to know where our kids are at and what they need to move on. We also need to know what's going on at home. While some kids do have help, other kids have parents doing their homework or parents who couldn't even begin to help them with their homework. And how do we make that level? I would like to see all our kids excited about learning, and I believe it can happen. I would like to see all our kids believe in themselves, and I believe that can happen. I know that high school kids love to explore. I've seen it in my classrooms. You hand them a tool and you tell them they have the freedom to use it, and they do. It takes time, it takes energy, and it takes a lot of work on our part. I see a lot of this in the elementary classes. You know, you throw some blocks out, they just do something with them and they learn stuff. They love to answer questions. They love to be put on the spot, and they're not afraid. I want to see that same thing in our high schools. I want to see our older kids not be afraid. I want to see them take an object and play with it and learn something about it and dance. In the Napa Valley, this is where we're at, and it breaks my heart. We've got a lot of work to do. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
So I've recently been volunteering in preschool, which has been fun for a secondary math guy like myself. Odd though, we're a good team. As I said to some friends recently, they're not very good at algebra, but they know way more animal noises than me. So together, right? Together.
It's weird to have two.
Let's see.
Cover all our bases.
I'm dying to know. Do you know Kurt Russell, Terry?
I do not know him, but I did go to the same school.
Yeah, he cool guyed you even back then, right? You can see it.
He was ahead of me.
We got Brian Shea up next. Brian Shea is from our Southern California chapter. So again, I must take back all the nasty things I Brian sent along this long resume, list of credentials, masters in this and that, awards here and there, quite an accomplished guy. So I'll just summarize with that. He's got 2 truths and a lie for you. He can do the splits on command. He has been married 7 times, and he was a nationally ranked chess player in high school. Can't wait to find out. Please welcome Ryan.
Thanks, Danny. Okay. Okay. I'm ready when you are. Hi there. Just so you know, I am Brian Shea. I teach in San Diego. I also got my credential from Davis, so I'm a little bit of a local as well, so go Davis. And I drink with Bill McCollum when I can, and I am still a friend of Dan Meyer, even though he dissed my conference down in Palm Springs. But in any event, so my talk is going to be about being a crusader for the Common Core. So what is a crusade? Crusades you probably learned about in social science class when you were a kid is all about that holy war, about invading the Muslims or something to that effect. It's all about, as you can see here, an organized campaign concerning a political, social movement. When I think crusade, I often think about these jokers too. These are the kind of crusaders that I think of, the Monty Python, Holy Grail, Quest for the Crusade. Yet there's also other kind of crusades. So which one are we? Are we these jokers with fake coconuts? Or are we these kind of crusaders trying to change the Common Core, trying to change what we're teaching? Or are we the other side and the people who are fighting the Common Core, the crusaders? And so what we're trying to figure out, what I want to talk about is where are we and what can we do to make sure we are doing the right fight to help our kids. You probably saw this on your Facebook feeds and Twitter feeds. This mother lambasting the Common Core in Arkansas. And this was posted by friends of mine in New York. I'm from New York originally. And this is all about how the Common Core sucks. Here's another one about math only makes sense if you're going in your life to make change at a grocery store. That's from a music teacher friend of mine in New York. Here's some other ones about second grade Common Core math. There's a house that would be built if you use the Common Core math. So all over the world, and in my world, we have these things just in the Common Core. You already see some states have already pulled out of the Common Core, the map in 2010 versus the map in 2014. And we always hear in the news, more states are trying to move out of the Common Core standards because it's bad for kids, it's bad implementation. You probably heard about Louis C.K. and his big rant, and Stephen Colbert and his big rant about why the Common Core is weird. And it's not the math that's weird, it's the way a lot of us are implementing it. Maybe not us in this room, probably not us in this room, but probably friends of ours, colleagues of ours, enemies of ours. It's all a public relations nightmare. There's misinformation, lies everywhere, fear. The federal government's taking over. Obama is ruining America. Socialism, it's rampant. There's lots of vocal opposition. We're in the 1950s again. There's this Red Scare against the Common Core. Here's that worksheet you probably all saw back in October about this is a Common Core math problem. His mom says, this is not how math should be done. What are you doing to my kids? kid, you're ruining my child, is what we hear all the time. And so teachers send home a worksheet and don't prep our kids for that. Here's another one of what we have about how we can fight this. The scripted Common Core lessons are not really an effective way to go. What you've been seeing, what you might be sending home are not active things to do. We need to educate our parents. You need to go to your school board meetings and talk about what the Common Core is about. Our poor teachers and students, whomever wrote this Common Core, must have been intoxicated. Poor Bill, Phil, and Jason were not intoxicated when they wrote this. God, poor guys. The abacus, apparently, is something we need to do. Here's what you can do: is when you see those on your Facebook feed and your Twitter feed, comment. Comment and comment. Whether they're your family, the cousin you hate or love, the colleague from your childhood, their children, comment and talk about what is wrong with that document and why that's not what we're trying to do to their children. And tell them that this is what it's really all about. It's about sense making and reasoning and thinking and strategy. That worksheet is a crappy worksheet, but that's not because of the Common Core. It's because your teacher got something crappy to work with and doesn't know how to deal with this world we're now in. And stay informed. Pay attention to those news feeds. I get every day a Common Core news feed, and some it's all about this legislative company is trying to get rid of something, or a new state trying to pass something, or a new district trying to change what they're doing. Learn what these talking points are so you can fight them. I had a school board meeting that I presented at, and there were lots of angry parents there, and I had to go toe-to-toe against these parents about why the Common Core is good. Some of them are grounded in truth and frustration. You know, there's a lot of frustrating things there. Some of them are just wacky lies. CommonCoreFacts.com has no facts about the Common Core on it. Check it out and you'll be really surprised about what you'll see there. It's all about what is not going on. It's the Tea Party rhetoric about Common Core is cuacc.org. California's united against the Common Core. They liken the Common Core to Nazi and socialism and Germany in World War II. That's what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to change and indoctrinate our children, and it's through the world of mathematics and algebra, yes. So we're on this revolution to save our kids. We need to fight these wackos, these politicians, these administrators, some of whom you or your colleagues have elected. We need to fight them. We need to join this revolution and change what's going on in our community about the Common Core. So again, please keep fighting. Dispel those rumors. Comment on your Facebook feed, your Twitter feed. Go to your community, have parent events, and demand high quality stuff. Get rid of those crappy worksheets and put together some good things. And so, thank you.
I've done this whole two truth and a lie thing enough to know that whenever I see a number in one of those truth or lies, to ask, like, is the number the wrong thing? So I'm guessing Brian's been married like 6 times, not 7 times. That's a good lie. 7? To the same person. 7 times. That's the truth.
This is going in the other pocket?
Wherever you want. Holy
cow. Wait, no, you do it.
Nationally ranked chess player, that's why. All right.
Okay. Oh shit. Okay.
We're in our last 2. Elizabeth Statmore, Cheese Monkey SF, for those who know her best. She's a friend of the community and the internet. Her 2 truths and a lie are that she went to the same high school as Snooki. She went to Princeton with Steven Strogatz. She was once fired by Steve Jobs 3 times in one day, so can't wait. Welcome her up, please.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Once upon a time, there was a small consortium of math wizards who ruled over the teaching of math in a glorious faraway land. When the Grand Wizard died, he left his flock of 17 unicorns to his 3 most trusted vice wizards. But he left these with very specific instructions about how they were to be divided up. To the first vice wizard, he left 1/2 of these unicorns. To the second vice wizard, he left 1/3 of his unicorns. And to the third vice wizard, he left 1/9 of his unicorns. So being extremely well trained in collaborative problem solving, the three vice wizards were not too tossed away. They strapped on their problem solving hats, they did a little think, pair, share, they made a diagram in the middle of their table, but very quickly things devolved into a rather tense negotiation. Things became ugly really, really quickly. So when they came to the end of all that they knew, they could only agree on one thing, and that was that they were going to need to travel into the forest to consult with the healer who lived in a hut in the deepest, darkest part of the woods. It took them a whole day's journey to get there, but when they arrived, they explained their situation to the healer, they showed her their diagram, they explained all the different strategies that they had tried, and they basically asked for help. And when they were done, the healer said, well, I'm going to need some time to think about your situation here. I'm going to think about it overnight, and I'll give you my answer in the morning. So the three little vice wizards slept rather fitfully that night, and in the morning they returned to the healer's hut. She told them, I've given your problem a lot of thought, and to be honest, I'm not sure if I can help you. The only thing I could think of was, well, if you want, you can have my unicorn. All of a sudden, everything worked. The first vice wizard took her share. Half of 18 is 9. The second vice wizard took his third. 1/3 of 18 is 6. Thank you. The third vice wizard took his 9th. 1/9 of 18 is 2. They had one unicorn left over, and they gave that back to the healer. What I like about this story is that I think it gives us some perspective on how our students' entanglements with a fixed mindset interfere with their ability to have a present moment awareness of their own mathematical experiences. The problem isn't that they've never heard of a growth mindset. The problem is that they're so identified with their fixed mindset ideas and their defense mechanisms that they've lost track of whether they're having a reaction to some situation or whether it's actually their self. So this, Dan, is your cat picture. This is our students' struggle, right? I mean, they don't understand what it is that is self and what is other, what is just reaction. So, So one key to dealing with this growth, with helping them toward a growth mindset, is to scaffold some disidentification practices that can help them to notice, because noticing what's going on and how you're identified with what's going on can really slow them down and shift the energy. And this is really the power of this. So for me, this has had a huge impact on my teaching practice and on my classes this year. And it's why I've started incorporating Neil Mercer's work on exploratory talk into all of my group work. Who's Neil Mercer? I'm so glad you asked. If you've read any of Malcolm Swann's work, there's only one person that Malcolm Swann cites more than himself, and that's actually Neil Mercer, who is a professor of educational psychology at the University of Cambridge. And he and his group are doing this just amazing work on exploratory talk and talking points and all the ways in which, by cultivating this culture of exploratory talk in our classroom, we can actually scaffold students' ability to experience, to have mathematical experience, to notice what they're experiencing in the moment, and to really process it. So this is my enthusiastic plug for talking points and exploratory talk, and for all of the disidentification practices that Neil Mercer and Douglas Barnes and Lynn Dawes have communicated. So thank you.
Really have enjoyed your writing last year, 6 months, not long, about talking moves. A few of my friends in the front row came in here. They so they're above the law. They came in holding a small plaque. It was really fun to watch them. And there were these 3 dead troll things up there.
That's the way to do it. What's that? Back pocket.
Which of these? One of these 3 names is not with the other.
Grab his wallet, should I go up behind?
Elizabeth, Snooki, Steve Sturgetz, or Steve Jobs?
I did not go to the same high school as Snooki.
Okay. Our final speaker today is Arjun Khalsa. Anybody in here call yourself a friend of Arjun's? Anybody? Arjun has 2 truths and a lie, as we all do here. I would say the one truth I have about Arjun is in a job in a community full of amazing, kind, generous people, he is the kindest and most generous, biggest-hearted that I know here. His 2 truths and a lie are that he once did a skit with Robin Williams at a technology conference. He has played sacred music in temples in India and recently participated in a triathlon. We need someone to hold a microphone for. Well, that's why I asked who's a friend of Arjun's. Are you really a friend of Arjun's enough to hold the mic for his guitar? But he's got it. Okay, please welcome Arjun up.
Tell me when you're ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Winter is around the corner, bringing with it mathematically predictable moods. The temperature measurably decreases. The proportion of daylight to darkness declines. We get emotional. At this time of year, millions lift their voices in song to raise their spirits. We're going to look at the math in music and moods, in major and minor modes, bringing in some blues and gospel in the process. We're going to rock this barn, and we're going to start with a fun song that we all know. Let's sing along. It goes like this. Sleigh bells ring, are you listening? In the lane, snow's a-glistening, a beautiful sight. We're happy tonight, walking in a winter wonderland. Now the math. This is in C major. It's a happy sound. When I pluck a string on the guitar, the string vibrates and the molecules around the string vibrate as well, and they bump their way to your ear. And if they bump 262 times per second, or it's 262 hertz, you call that middle C. And that's where the happiness begins. When I play the scale, the major scale, the frequencies increase in a fractional proportional way. 9/8, 5/4, all the way to an octave. 2 times the frequency, twice the pitch, we call it an octave. Now the first, 3rd, 5th, and 8th notes, they give us a major chord. And it has the exact molecular pattern you see on the screen. Creates a happy sound. Some sounds are minor. They're more severe, like this hit rock tune about California in winter from the 60s. We gotta do call and response. We gotta nail it. You ready? All the leaves are brown, and the sky is gray. I went for a walk on a winter's day. I'd be safe and warmer if I were in LA. What happened? We went from major to minor, such a huge shift, but mathematically a tiny shift. Only one of the 4 tones changes from 5/4 to 6/5. The interval between the 1 and the 3 is a little bit different in the minor. Wow, the mood shifts. We're going to take a look here at the molecular pattern of this minor chord. The only difference between minor and majors, between the gray dots and the green dots, is just a tiny shift, but a huge mood change. Fascinating. We're going to look at photographs and chord charts, which are kind of like fraction bars, of a minor chord and a major chord, with the all-important blue, 3rd tone, in red. Then there's blues. It goes between the 2. Minor, major, minor, major, minor, major, minor, major. The blues mathematically combines minor and major and creates this complex, happy, sad sound. And when you pull that into the world of hymns, you get gospel, you get Elvis, you get Aretha, and that's some pretty good stuff. Your voice kind of slides around between the minor and the major. It's a jazzy kind of feel. So we're going to apply this to Amazing Grace, one of the greatest songs of all time. Now on the right we've got a straight up version. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. But on the left is a mathematically richer version, as you see in the spreadsheet, which is a song sheet. And it goes, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. So your voice kind of slides around, you get kind of bluesy. Are you ready? Yeah. You ready to make it happen? Yeah. All right, here come the words. No cat pictures. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wreck like me. Was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. From major to minor, from blues to gospel, the moods, the music, and the math are one.
Understood a fraction of that, but I love how it sounded all the way through. So, what is your lie to close us out here?
Robin Williams, yes. The triathlon, yes. Sacred music, yes, but I've never been to India.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Can we give it up for the math form here, please? Curriculum, this sort of thing, they do all the sessions, love it. And their work is only partway done here. They're going to edit all these together, throw them on YouTube, at which point I expect you guys to send these around to colleagues who are not here, and you know how much they miss. Can we please express our appreciation for these presenters here? There's a pile of angst over there, yes, but I missed the cloud of insight there also. So by all means, come on up after this and express your appreciation individually in person. Ask questions of these folks right here. We're going to see you guys tomorrow. I hope you guys have a great time tonight and be safe, but not too safe. And here's April with some words to close us out.
Conference, and I happen to say that a lot. My friends look at me and they go, "What are you doing at math conference? This is what we do!" Oh my gosh, they just don't have any idea. So we still, I think, is there food in the back? Yes. Yeah? And the bartender is still here? We got beer and wine still? Stay and have a good time. Tomorrow we have Joe Bowler. There's probably more things I should say, but I can think of one thing right now. So we've been coming here for almost over 50 years. The first weekend in December. Next year we're going to be here the second week in December. I know. It was in your program, but there was a little typo. It said 2014 instead of 2015. But we're going to be working really hard to still come because it's going to be amazing again, and we really want you here to celebrate with us and to learn lots of great math stuff and do what we do here at Math Conference.